lost yesterday to senseless gun violence. This is why we have to remain vigilant about getting guns off of our streets and keeping them out of the hands of violent criminals. I think about those two young boys and I think about their potential. They are two of Chicago's children robbed of their futures, and it is unacceptable. I have to say it again, unacceptable that our young people continue to be subject to this type of violence. So my prayers continue for their families during this difficult time of grief. We all have to do better, and that's why we, Chicago Police Department and its officers, are working in the community and with City Hall and alongside our federal, state, and local law enforcement partners to ensure visibility, engagement, and collaboration at every turn. As of today, speaking of guns, our officers have taken 284 guns off the streets of Chicago. Today's the 13th of January. 284 guns have been taken off the streets of Chicago. And we will make every effort to come down hard on offenders, gangs and narcotic networks driving violence in our city. That fact is evident in some of the notable arrests so far this year that our dedicated and committed officers have made. Just this past weekend, this Saturday on January 8th, after a 3-month-long investigation, our Gang Investigations Unit served 2 search warrants in the 300 block of West 110th Street. 2 arrests were made in connection with this search warrant, 1 adult and 1 juvenile. We've seized, as you can see in the picture, 35 guns. But let me run through all of the things that we seized. 31 guns, 4 rifle caliber pistols, 32 loaded regular handgun magazines, 11 loaded rifle magazines, 5 loaded high-capacity drum magazines, 2 polymer molds able to produce 80 ghost guns, and numerous, as you can see, live rounds of ammunition. Imagine, just imagine, if these guns had hit the streets of Chicago. I cannot help but think of all the lost futures and the devastation to families and neighborhoods and businesses these firearms could have caused once in the hands of violent criminals. Also this week, our intelligence section, working with our organized retail theft crime task force, were able to identify and arrest one of the offenders behind the ongoing smash and grabs in the city of Chicago that we saw at the end of last year, to include North Face stores, the North Face department store. The offender participated in 3 smash and grabs between December 10th and December 21st, resulting in the loss of over $10,000 in merchandise. This was a public-private collaboration, and emphasize that enough. This was a public and private collaboration pairing both retailers and online merchants with law enforcement. Innovative strategies like these remain a key part of our efforts to combat crime. We were able to secure felony federal charges for this individual for those smash and grabs. And I'll just say this, and I said this at the end of last year, directly to these criminals that are doing these types of crimes and other types of crimes. Don't think for one moment that we're going to let you get away with this. We are going to pursue you and bring you to justice for the crimes that have occurred in the past, that you continue to do. You will be held accountable. So don't think for 1 minute we're just going to let you get away with this. On January 4th, our gang investigation unit observed a stolen vehicle during a carjacking. Upon officers approaching the two vehicles, offenders attempted to flee. Officers apprehended both of these suspects and recovered 3 9mm caliber semi-automatic handguns and 1 .45 caliber semi-automatic handgun. That was January 4th. January 5th, our gang investigations team through a search warrant, searched a documented gang member and recovered illegal narcotics and paraphernalia, an estimated street value of $133,000. In addition, 21 live 9mm ammunition rounds and 1 loaded handgun with live rounds as well. There were approximately 11,000 fake oxycodone pills laced with fentanyl included in this recovery. We are facing an urgent crisis in the opioid epidemic. In the 8th District, a homicide suspect was arrested and charged on January 4th in connection with an incident that happened December 20th. The offender was identified using our pod video camera and private surveillance, which captured the incident. Also on January 4th, an offender was extradited from the state of Georgia and charged with attempted first-degree murder in connection to the August 2021 shooting. The offender initially fled the city after being identified by the victim. On January 4th, 2 juveniles were charged with 1 count of aggravated vehicle hijacking after an attempted carjacking in the 6,000 block of North Broadway. Both offenders fled on foot after failing to successfully start the vehicle and were positively identified by the victim. Officers apprehended 2 suspects on January 6th following a carjacking. The offender approached the vehicle and ordered the victim from the vehicle and fled. Short time later, the vehicle was located with 2 occupants and the arrests were made. Charges include 1 count of aggravated vehicle hijacking. We've made this year more than 56 carjacking arrests. 56. Again, it's January 13th. Much of this can be attributed to our vehicular hijacking task force. Just yesterday, this task force conducted their first joint vehicular hijacking citywide operation of the year, and in conjunction with a number of area and state units and agencies. Yesterday, we made 5 felony arrests and recovered 2 hijacked vehicles and 7 stolen vehicles, working not only with our OEMC, Cook County Sheriffs, Illinois State Police, and the Illinois State Auto Task Force, to include other suburban police agencies. We will keep the momentum going in pursuing all leads and working with our local and federal partners. Most of all, we will keep working in every community to build trust. We know that building trust means alleviating fear. This year, we set the goal for our department to have more and more positive community interactions and engagements. I'll close with this. This is the most difficult time to be a police officer in this country's history, without question. But the men and women of the Chicago Police Department are dedicated, committed to protecting the people of Chicago. With that, we'll just take just a few questions, and I just want to repeat the tip line on the board here before we start that. The tip line for a reward up to $15,000 for homicides and up to $5,000 for gun trafficking that leads to convictions and charges. That tip line is 833-408-0069. I'll repeat that one more time. That tip line for a reward up to $15,000 for homicide tips and up to $5,000 for gun tips for gun trafficking is 833-408-0069. And we'll take just a few questions this morning. Yes.
Superintendent, do we understand?
That's not true.
It's not true?
No. We're making the appropriate adjustments, and it's one of those things that obviously we take great pains in making that tough decision to have our officers work their days off. If you recall, we initially started a couple of years ago as we started seeing staffing shortage with 2 days off council, both their days off. And we've dialed that back significantly the last several months to 1 of their days off so they can get the other day off. We have not canceled any of their vacations. We have not canceled any of their scheduled holidays because we're very cognizant of the strain and stresses of being the police during this most difficult time. So we're being very careful, as well as integrating wellness services when we do have canceled deployments involving their days off, where peer support officers are not deployed, that they're there to support our officers as well as our EAP. So we've integrated officer wellness into these canceled days off. So again, continuing to try to mitigate the impacts on our officers and their families, especially being away from home when we have to do it. It's all around emerging violence, obviously. The surge in violence is the only reason why we would even consider it. But when we do have to consider it, we take great pains in making sure it has the least amount of impact on them. Again, not canceling their vacations that are scheduled, not canceling their holidays that are scheduled, and dialing back the 2-day off council to the 1 day when we absolutely have to do it for the safety of the officers that are at work, making sure they have enough officers at work. Yes?
Why didn't you make
What news agency are you with?
Sun-Times?
So you got a lot wrong in that story. Number one, you initially reported that the 1st District and the 25th District TAC officers had gone back and volunteered to go back into District Patrol. That's not accurate. The 1st District TAC did not do that. I don't know if you reported a correction in that story, but that was inaccurate, as well as the characterization of TAC officers helping to answer 911 calls was inaccurate. So for as long as anyone can remember, TAC officers have helped answer 911 calls when we needed them to. It is not a new dynamic, nor did we do anything different than we've done for as long as anyone can remember. We tried to call the reporters who wrote the article to correct the story, and they already knew about the ongoing for forever utilization of TAC to support beat officers by answering 911 calls. So again, the communication is from your sources miscommunicating to the reporters that wrote the article. And I would just ask the reporters just to check in with us when they get those sources. And I would just highlight this in addition to answering your question, is that, you know, this department is going through the most significant change it's ever gone through. If you just go back 3 years, from 2019 to now, we began the consent decree in earnest. The consent decree has significantly changed not only search warrant policy, foot pursuit policy, use of force policy, First Amendment policies, Fourth Amendment policies, in just a short time. We went from 11% compliance with the consent decree to over 52% compliance with the consent decree in just less than 18 months. In addition to those changes, we had further amended changes to our vehicle pursuit policy. But all of the changes, not just the consent decree changes, but all the things we've done also included a significant change to their training. So we went from 3 years ago, 0 number of hours required as Chicago police officer, 0, to we ended last year with every officer being trained for 40 hours in over 6 months. So here's what I'll say about cops and change. And it is an inside joke, and maybe you won't get the joke, but it's funny to me, so I'm going to say it. Cops hate the way things are. They hate change. But one of the reactions to the fear of change is obviously we get sources calling you all, using you to push back against change. And I would say it's just so important for officer safety, for building trust, not just compliance with the consent decree, but we are going to change. The community, leaders everywhere here in the city, across the country, is asking for cultural change in the profession. And no disgruntled employee is going to stop change. No article mischaracterizing the changes is going to stop us from changing the culture, transforming this organization, and building trust in the community. So it is folly to think that hypercriticism, bad sourcing, bad headlines is going to stop the momentum of changing this organization. It will not. It will not. We will transform this organization to one that this city is proud of, that respects the community in all parts of the community, as well as build trust internally in the organization that we are doing things in a way that is helping them be safer, helping their officer wellness, as well as reducing crime. So I hope I answered that question. If you had a quick follow-up, real quick. I don't think that's accurate either, but go ahead.
Okay.
That's not accurate.
You mentioned about the goal building up, relationship.
So again, you're continuing the mischaracterization of cutting. We didn't cut tactical units. Tactical units have always, for as long as anyone can remember, helped out with 911 calls. So that's a total mischaracterization, and you just repeated it again. It's wrong to say that that's what's happened. They're helping answer 911 calls. They haven't been cut. Who told you that? But sources. And then I went through a whole narrative about fear of change and how the mischaracterization is one way people who are afraid to change lash out. But you just can't repeat the mischaracterization. They've always answered more 911 calls. Tactical teams have always answered 911 calls. But your question is fair because I want to answer it and just kind of put a bow on top of it. So we have started this year better than we started last year, and the previous year, and the previous year. So we started this year. It doesn't mean anything because it's so early. Things could change on a dime. But we have started this year better than we started last year. Homicides were down 26%. They were up almost 40% last year at this point. Shootings are down 17%. They were up double digits last January at this point. So I hope that answers your question. Thank you. Yes. Yeah, Brendan is there to update you of what we can tell you. It's still early on, but of what we can tell you, we'll have Chief Dinahan with the Bureau of Detectives update you.
So as the superintendent mentioned, it is extremely early on. You know, we had a couple murders yesterday. So at 74th and Vincennes, we had a female who was 29 years of age that was killed while sitting in her vehicle. So officers had responded to a shot spotter at that location, and they observed the victim seated in her vehicle, you know, motionless at that time. And looking back through some video, we observe a vehicle pull up, two males exit the car, walk up to the victim's vehicle, draw handguns, and fire into the vehicle, striking her. So we have some video evidence, we have some firearm evidence, and obviously detectives are working on that case right now, but it's an extremely brand new case, so we're continuing to investigate at this time. It appears that she was alone. Like I said, we're looking for some more video evidence, but what we know as of now, she was alone. Yes. And as the soup mentioned, anybody could help out and give us some information, because we have some video evidence that supports that two individuals did this, but we need them, we need them identified. We haven't pushed out any videos yet of those suspects, but we definitely need some help from the community. So a little repeat of, we need some help, and same thing, it's obviously extremely early in the investigation. But on the 12th of January, just after about 3:50 p.m. at 2234 West Adams is where we had one of the 14-year-olds that was killed. Same thing, the officers responded to a person shot. They found the victim lying on the ground with 2 gunshot wounds to his chest. Obviously, the officers started doing compressions, attempting to save his life, but were unable to. And then we talked to a couple of witnesses who stated that they observed, 2 people fleeing the scene, and they also observed someone walk up to the victim, go into his book bag, remove an item, and flee the scene as well. So we do have some firearm evidence, and we do have some, once again, some city cameras and some private cameras that we're looking at. But we definitely, once again, it's super early on. We don't have a suspect identified, and anybody who has some additional information can reach out to Area 4 detectives, or, as the superintendent keeps talking about, text and give us information, through the website. And then the second incident was at 12th of January, just before 9 p.m. This one was at 1480 West 73rd Street. Once again, a 14-year-old victim here who was walking with his friend. So the friend's obviously a witness to this. They're walking with a friend. A dark-colored vehicle is driving on 73rd Street, and an occupant from that vehicle shoots in the direction of the victim. Victim sustains a gunshot wound to the head, where unfortunately, he is eventually pronounced dead. So once again, we have limited video. We have some firearm evidence. A lot of work to do, but we definitely would look for anybody's help who can push us in the right direction on identifying these offenders.
Thank you, everyone.